The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber groaned shut with a finality that seemed to echo the doom facing the known galaxy. Emergency session lights bathed the ancient hall in crimson as representatives of 47 species took their designated positions. The air recyclers struggled against the mixture of alien atmospheres, creating an almost oppressive heaviness that matched the mood. Ambassador Kethlar of the Vorthak Empire stood at the central podium, his 6 compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays that surrounded him. His usually pristine diplomatic robes were stained with what looked suspiciously like blood, though whether it belonged to him or something else remained unclear. The veteran diplomat, who had negotiated peace treaties across 3 galactic arms, now trembled with barely contained terror. Honored members of the council, his voice translator crackled with static from damaged equipment. We face a crisis that threatens not just our colonies, not just our trade routes, but the very existence of sapient life in this galaxy. The holographic display activated, showing the verdant death world of Kepler 442b. What had once been a lush planet was now a scarred wasteland, its surface torn and burned. Massive claw marks gouged through reinforced bunkers, while acidic burns ate through starship hulls like tissue paper. The Shadow Maws have broken containment, Kethlar announced. The effect was instantaneous. The crystalline Zephyrians, typically radiant with inner light, dimmed to barely visible glimmers. The proud Korathians pulled their bio-armor tighter around their forms. Even the emotionally controlled ethereals showed signs of distress, their psychic fields wavering like heat mirages. The Shadow Maws were more than legendary. They were nightmares given flesh. 300 years ago, they had emerged from the deep caves of their homeworld and systematically destroyed the advanced Veltar Confederacy, a civilization that had stood for millennia. The survivors spoke in whispers of creatures that moved like living shadows, that could phase through energy barriers as if they didn't exist, and that hunted with an intelligence that rivaled the galaxy's greatest minds. 12 of our finest containment fleets, Kethlar continued, his voice breaking, including the dreadnought Eternal Vigilance and her escort squadrons, have been completely destroyed, not damaged, consumed. The creatures are spreading across the Kepler system, and our xenobiologists estimate they'll reach the populated inner colonies of 3 different species within 6 standard galactic cycles. High Counselor Vexnari, the ancient insectoid leader whose chitinous frame had survived 7 assassination attempts and 2 galactic wars, clicked her razor-sharp mandibles in a rhythm that spoke of deep nervousness. Her compound eyes focused on the tactical displays showing the expanding zone of destruction. "What of the Korathian neural suppression technology?" she demanded. "The same fields that pacified the berserkers of Andromeda? Failed catastrophically." Kethlar's translator couldn't hide the despair in his voice. The Shadow Maws adapted to the neural frequencies within 3 standard hours. They learned to use the suppression fields as beacons, following them directly to the source. The research station. There were no survivors. "The ethereal mindbinders?" asked a delegate from the back. "Surely they're centuries of psychic warfare experience." 3 entire orders attempted mental contact simultaneously, Kethlar interrupted. The psychic backlash shattered their minds. Those who survived speak only of an alien intelligence so vast and predatory that merely touching it drove them to madness. The Shadow Maws don't just hunt with their bodies. They hunt with their minds. Panic erupted across the chamber as 47 different species began shouting in 47 different languages. The translation matrix overloaded, creating a cacophony of static and partially converted words. Some delegates activated emergency shields around their seating areas. Others began transmitting urgent messages to their home worlds, warning of the approaching doom. The Shadow Maws weren't just apex predators. They were impossibly adaptive apex predators. Every containment method, every weapon, every strategy used against them only made them stronger. They learned, they evolved, and they remembered. "Order! Order!" Vexnari's voice boomed through the chamber's speakers, enhanced by sonic amplifiers that made her words felt as much as heard. "We are the Galactic Council. We have faced the Devourer fleets, the Machine Rebellion, the Entropy Storms. We will not be defeated by... There is one option we haven't discussed, a small, uncertain voice spoke from the back of the chamber. The great hall fell silent. Every eye, lens, sensor, and psychic focus turned toward the source of the interruption. In the shadows of the observer gallery stood a figure so small and unremarkable that most delegates had forgotten it was there. Junior Ambassador Tilak represented one of the galaxy's newest species, the humans of Sol 3. They were tiny by galactic standards, barely reaching the chest height of most council members. Their soft, pale skin showed no natural armor. Their small teeth indicated an omnivorous rather than predatory nature, and their round eyes lacked the enhanced vision common to most sapient species. They looked, for all intents and purposes, like prey animals that had accidentally achieved spaceflight. High Counselor Vexnari's mandibles clicked in what, among her species, passed for contemptuous laughter. The sound echoed through the chamber like grinding metal on glass. The newcomers wished to speak. Her voice dripped with barely concealed disdain. Your species achieved faster-than-light travel barely 50 standard years ago. You've been part of our galactic community for less than one full orbital rotation. Your homeworld still suffers from primitive warfare, environmental destruction, and social chaos. She gestured with one armored claw at the human delegation's seating area. What could you possibly offer against creatures that have defeated our greatest civilizations? Captain Jake Morrison, the human military attaché, stepped forward into the chamber's central light. Where other species wore energy-woven garments that could adapt to different environments and provide protection, the humans still dressed in simple fabric uniforms. His appearance was so unremarkable, so primitive, that several delegates exchanged glances that clearly questioned why these creatures had been granted council observer status at all. Morrison's voice was steady despite the weight of 47 species' attention focused on him. "We'd like to study one of these shadow maws up close," he said with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "Maybe we can find something you missed." The laughter that filled the chamber was neither kind nor brief. It echoed from the crystal formations of the Zephyrians, the biospeakers of the Corathians, and the mental projections of the Ethereals. To them, the small human suggestion wasn't brave, it was suicidal stupidity on a galactic scale. The observation deck of the orbital station Prometheus hummed with nervous energy as 47 species worth of xenobiologists, military strategists, and diplomatic personnel crowded around the main viewing screen. 3 days had passed since the humans made their impossible proposal, and now their primitive vessel was actually approaching the death world. "This is absolute madness," Ambassador Kethlar whispered, his 6 eyes tracking the human transport as it descended through Kepler 442b's turbulent atmosphere. "They're flying straight toward certain death in that metal coffin." The human ship was a study in calculated primitiveness. Where galactic council vessels featured quantum drives that could fold space, elegant energy shields that could deflect stellar radiation, and bioadaptive hulls that could self-repair, the human transport Beowulf was essentially a controlled explosion wrapped in steel plating. Chemical rockets pushed it through space with the subtlety of a meteor, while crude ceramic heat shields protected it during atmospheric entry. "Their technology is centuries behind even our oldest member species," observed Dr. Clethmore, his crystalline Zephyrian form pulsing with analytical light patterns. "No energy shields, no quantum communications, no adaptive armor. How do they expect to survive against creatures that tore through our most advanced warships?" High Counselor Vexnari watched the descent with compound eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. "Perhaps," she said with grim resignation, "it's for the best. At least their sacrifice might provide useful data about Shadowmaw behavior patterns. We can analyze their final moments to better understand our enemy." The words hung in the recycled air of the observation deck like a death sentence. Below them, 12 humans were voluntarily descending into what every galactic military expert agreed was certain annihilation. On the surface of Kepler 442b, the human team spread out across a landscape that redefined the word desolation. The planet had once been a garden world, with cities that floated above crystalline forests and research stations that studied the indigenous wildlife. Now it looked like the surface of hell itself, twisted metal and scorched earth stretching to every horizon, punctuated by the skeletal remains of what had once been proud Vortak installations. Dr. Elena Vasquez, expedition leader and xenobiologist, knelt beside the wreckage of what had been a Carathian patrol vessel just 2 weeks earlier. The biometal hull, designed to regenerate from most damage, had been shredded like wet paper. Massive claw marks gouged through armor that could withstand direct plasma cannon hits, while strange acidic burns had eaten completely through hull sections nearly 3 meters thick. "Sweet Jesus," whispered Corporal Mike Chun, running his scanner over the destruction. His readings showed bite forces that defied physics and acid concentrations that should have been impossible in nature. What kind of nightmare are we dealing with here? These things must have jaws like hydraulic presses. According to every military database in the Council archives, Vasquez replied, her voice steady despite the carnage surrounding them. Adult shadowmaws average 4 meters in length and 2 meters at the shoulder, roughly the size of earth horses. But their muscle density exceeds that of great white sharks. Their bone structure is stronger than titanium alloy, and their intelligence quotient rivals that of the ethereal mindbinders. Staff Sergeant Amanda Torres checked her assault rifle for the 5th time in 10 minutes, though every Council military expert had assured them that conventional weapons were utterly useless against Shadowmaw hide. "So let me get this straight, document. We're hunting invisible, genius, acid-spitting wolves the size of Clydesdales, with teeth that can bite through starship armor and an attitude problem that's already wiped out 3 entire civilizations. That's about the size of it," Vasquez confirmed with the kind of calm that came from either incredible courage or complete insanity. "Outstanding," Torres muttered. "I knew I should have taken that desk job on Luna Base." A low rumble echoed across the devastated plains, a sound like distant thunder mixed with the growl of some impossibly large predator. Every human on the team froze, their enhanced hearing picking up harmonics that spoke of intelligence, coordination, and barely restrained power. In the distance, something moved between the twisted remains of what had once been a magnificent Vortak research complex. The movement was fluid, purposeful, and utterly alien, like watching shadows come to life. "Contact," whispered Private Rodriguez through the comm network, his voice tight with adrenaline. 2 clicks northeast, moving through the ruins. Visual contact established and, holy God in heaven, it's beautiful. Through their shared tactical display network, the entire team watched as Rodriguez's helmet camera revealed the first living Shadowmaw any human had ever seen. The creature was simultaneously magnificent and terrifying, a being of living darkness that seemed to bend light around its form like a personal aurora. Its eyes burned with an inner fire that spoke of intelligence beyond anything in Earth's evolutionary history, while teeth that gleamed like obsidian daggers caught the alien sunlight. "It's looking directly at me," Rodriguez breathed into his calm, making eye contact. "Should I engage?" "Repeat, requesting permission to engage." "Negative," Vasquez ordered firmly. "Do not fire. Maintain distance and let it approach if it chooses to. We're here to observe, not to fight." The Shadowmaw tilted its massive head, studying the small human with what looked unmistakably like curiosity rather than hunger. It took one careful step forward, then another, moving with the fluid grace of a predator that had never known fear. Then its pack emerged from the ruins, 5 more of the deadly creatures, each one unique in its terrible beauty, moving in perfect coordination like dancers in some cosmic ballet of death. Rodriguez, showing either remarkable courage or remarkable stupidity, slowly reached into his field pack and withdrew a standard military MRE beef stew with vegetables. With deliberate movements, he activated the self-heating packet, opened the container, and placed it on the scorched ground between himself and the approaching alpha predator. Then he backed away, hands visible and empty. The lead Shadowmaw approached the offering with the caution of a creature that had learned to expect traps and deception from sapient species. It lowered its massive head, inhaled once through nostrils that could probably detect individual molecules, and then began to eat. "Well, I'll be damned," Torres whispered into the stunned silence of the comm network. The Galactic Council's Emergency Command Center had become a hive of frantic activity, with xenobiologists, military analysts, and diplomatic attaches huddled around monitoring stations displaying impossible data streams. For 6 continuous hours, They had watched 12 humans survive in the presence of creatures that had annihilated entire star fleets, and the readings defied every known principle of predator behavior. "This cannot be accurate," Kethlar muttered for the 100th time, his 6 eyes darting between multiple holographic displays. "The bioscanner readings must be corrupted. Some form of interference from the planet's magnetic field." But the readings were crystal clear, verified by 17 different monitoring systems and triple-checked by the most advanced xenobiology equipment in known space. The Shadowmaw's neurological patterns showed none of the aggressive spikes that had preceded every documented attack in the past 3 centuries. Instead, their brain activity displayed something the galaxy's finest scientists had never recorded from these creatures: genuine curiosity mixed with what could only be described as contentment. Dr. Vasquez sat cross-legged on the scorched earth of Kepler 442b, while a creature that had single-handedly destroyed the battle cruiser Eternal Vigilance lay beside her like an enormous, deadly house cat. The massive predator's eyes were half-closed in what appeared to be pleasure, as she gently scratched behind what might have been ears hidden beneath its shadow-wreathed skull. Across the devastated landscape, the impossible scene was repeated again and again. Corporal Chun had somehow initiated what looked suspiciously like a game of fetch with 2 juvenile Shadowmaws, throwing chunks of twisted metal that the young predators retrieved with obvious delight. Staff Sergeant Torres was conducting what appeared to be basic obedience training, complete with hand signals and verbal commands that the creatures seemed to understand instinctively. "The Council demands an immediate explanation." Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the quantum communication array from the orbital station. "Every military strategist, every xenobiologist, every expert we have says this should be impossible. How are you accomplishing this?" "We're not accomplishing anything," Vasquez replied, her voice calm despite the surreal nature of her situation. "We're just being ourselves. Being human." "That's not a scientific explanation, Doctor. Actually, it's the only explanation that matters." She paused as the massive Shadowmaw beside her made a sound that was part purr, part growl, but somehow entirely comforting. Every species that has encountered the Shadowmaws approached them as problems to be solved, threats to be neutralized, or weapons to be controlled. The Korathians tried to suppress their neural patterns. The Ethereals attempted to dominate their minds. The Vorthak built bigger and stronger cages. The communication channel carried the sounds of the devastated world, wind whistling through broken structures, the distant rumble of geological instability, and underneath it all, something that sounded almost like contentment. "But humans have been living alongside apex predators for our entire evolutionary history," she continued. "Wolves, bears, great cats, sharks. We learned millennia ago that the secret isn't domination or suppression. It's partnership, mutual respect, understanding that we're not trying to make them less than they are, we're finding ways to coexist with them exactly as they are." On the orbital station, High Counselor Vexnari leaned forward, her compound eyes focusing intently on the video feeds. "Partnership? These creatures destroyed 3 of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. They're apex predators with intelligence that rivals our greatest minds." "Because those civilizations tried to cage them," Torres interjected, her voice carrying clearly through the comm system as she taught a Shadowmaw to respond to basic directional commands. "Think about it from their perspective. You're an intelligent being, a predator that has evolved to roam freely across vast territories, and suddenly these aliens show up and decide you're too dangerous to exist freely. They try to lock you in containment facilities, suppress your natural instincts, treat you like a disease to be quarantined." She gestured to the Shadowmaw beside her, which had learned to sit on command and was now regarding her with what looked unmistakably like respect. "How would any of you react if someone tried to cage you because you were dangerous? How would your species respond to being treated like monsters?" The silence that followed was profound and telling. Every species on the Council had their own history of conflict, their own moments when they had been forced to fight for their right to exist freely in the galaxy. "They're not monsters," Vasquez said softly, running her hand along the Shadowmaw's flank. The creature's hide was warm to the touch, almost like stroking a massive cat. "They're just animals, incredibly intelligent, incredibly powerful animals who have been treated like weapons of mass destruction instead of living beings with their own needs, desires, and social structures. The lead Shadowmaw, the one the humans had begun calling Alpha, raised its great head and looked directly into Vasquez's helmet camera. For a moment that seemed to stretch across space and time, those burning stellar eyes stared directly at the assembled council members watching from orbit. The intelligence behind that gaze was vast, ancient, and utterly alien, but it was also unmistakably aware. Then, in a gesture that would be replayed in xenobiology classrooms for generations to come, the creature seemed to nod, a simple acknowledgement that transcended species barriers and spoke to something fundamental about consciousness and recognition. "My God," whispered Dr. Clethmore from the observation deck. "They understand. They've always understood. We just never bothered to listen." The implications of that realization rippled through the command center like a shockwave. The Shadowmaws weren't just apex predators. They were sapient beings who had been imprisoned, experimented upon, and treated as mindless monsters for centuries. And now, for the first time in galactic history, someone was treating them as equals. Word of the impossible alliance spread across the galaxy with the speed of quantum transmissions, carried by merchant vessels, diplomatic pouches, and the gossip networks that connected every civilized world. Within a standard galactic week, the story had reached the furthest colonies. Humans had achieved what the greatest military minds considered impossible. They had formed bonds with the Shadowmaws. The reactions varied wildly across species lines. The militant Korathians dismissed it as propaganda, certain that the humans would be devoured the moment they showed weakness. The analytical Zephyrians calculated probability matrices that suggested the partnership was statistically impossible. The ethereal mindbinders retreated into deep meditation, trying to comprehend how such mentally primitive creatures could succeed where their psychic mastery had failed. But the proof was undeniable, broadcast across every major communication network in known space. Within the sterile confines of the Council's Xenobiology Research Station, scientists from dozens of species crowded around holographic displays showing the humans' daily routines on Kepler 442b. The footage defied everything they thought they knew about apex predator behavior. Dr. Elena Vasquez walked through the ruins of the old research complex with Alpha at her side, neither dominant nor submissive, moving together like partners who had hunted as a team for years rather than days. The massive Shadowmaw would occasionally pause to investigate interesting scents or sounds, and Vasquez would wait patiently, understanding that her companion's enhanced senses might detect threats or opportunities invisible to human perception. "It's unprecedented in the annals of xenobiology," Dr. Clethmore reported to the emergency session of the Council's Science Directorate. His crystalline form pulsed with confused light patterns as he struggled to categorize what he was observing. "The humans aren't exhibiting any of the behavioral patterns we associate with predator management. They're not using dominance displays, fear conditioning, or technological superiority to control the Shadowmaws." "Then what are they doing?" demanded Professor Zara KTH, a renowned Korathian behavioral scientist whose bio-armor rippled with frustrated energy patterns. "They're integrating," Clethmore replied, the words seeming to surprise him even as he spoke them. "The humans are adopting pack dynamics, but not as Alpha or Omega members. They're functioning as specialized pack members with unique capabilities." The holographic display shifted to show Staff Sergeant Torres working with 3 Shadowmaws to investigate a crashed supply pod. The predators used their enhanced senses to detect structural weaknesses and potential dangers, while Torres used her opposable thumbs and tool-making abilities to safely extract useful materials. Neither species dominated the other. They collaborated. But this contradicts every established principle of interspecies interaction, Zara KTH protested. Apex predators don't form partnerships with prey species. It's evolutionarily impossible. Perhaps, Clethmore's lights flickered with growing understanding. That's because we've been thinking about this wrong. Observe their social structure more carefully. The display changed to show archived footage from Earth, transmitted as part of humanity's cultural exchange files when they first joined the galactic community. The images showed something that had puzzled xenobiologists for months: humans living in close proximity to creatures that could technically, be dangerous to them. They domesticated wolves into dogs, Clethmore explained, using the human terminology. They share their homes with predatory felines. They've even been known to form emotional bonds with reptilian and avian species. But look closer at the dynamics. The footage showed human children playing with large canines, adults grooming feline companions, and elderly humans receiving comfort from animals that retained many of their predatory instincts. They're not domesticating the shadow moths because they're not trying to change them, Clethmore continued. Every other species that encountered the shadow moths attempted to make them less than they were, less aggressive, less intelligent, less free. But humans seem to have an instinctive understanding that the key to partnership isn't making your ally weaker. The implications of this realization sent ripples of shock through the assembled scientists. For millennia, galactic civilization had approached dangerous species through containment, suppression, or elimination. The concept of working with predators while allowing them to remain fully predatory was revolutionary. 3 days ago, Clethmore announced, sensors detected a rival pack of shadow moths approaching the human research site. Based on bio readings, they showed clear hostile intent toward the established pack. The display shifted to tactical recordings of the encounter. The approaching shadow moths moved with the coordinated aggression that had destroyed fleets, but as they neared the research site, something extraordinary happened. The human team had immediately taken defensive positions, not against the shadow moths they'd bonded with, but alongside them. Dr. Vasquez stood shoulder to shoulder with Alpha, while Torres positioned herself to cover the flanks of her packmates. The message was unmistakably clear. Attack the humans, face the entire pack. The rival pack retreated, Clethmore concluded. Without a single hostile action, 12 humans had become protected members of one of the galaxy's most dangerous predator societies. Professor Zarakath's bioarmor shifted to patterns of awed respect. They've become part of the ecosystem itself. Not conquerors or controllers, but family. The word hung in the sterile air of the research station like a revelation. Family. Not subjects, not tools, not contained threats, but family. The humans had looked at the galaxy's most feared predators and seen not monsters to be caged, but potential relatives to be welcomed into their pack. And the shadow moths, for the first time in centuries, had finally found a species that understood what they had always been, not mindless killers, but intelligent beings seeking their place in a universe that had only ever seen them as threats. The transformation was just beginning. 3 months after the initial contact on Kepler 442b, the Galactic Council faced a crisis that would test everything they thought they understood about the human shadow moth partnership. Reports flooded in from across 17 star systems. The creatures were moving again, spreading beyond their quarantined homeworld in numbers that dwarfed previous containment breaches. But this time, something was fundamentally different. The shadow moths weren't destroying everything in their path. They were following the humans. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the Great Chamber, but the atmosphere was unlike any in the institution's 1,000-year history. For the first time since the founding of galactic civilization, apex predators walked freely through the halls of power. Captain Jake Morrison, now bearing the unprecedented title of Interspecies Integration Coordinator, strode through the massive doors flanked by 2 creatures that had once been the stuff of nightmares. Alpha, the pack leader whose very presence had once meant certain death, padded silently beside him with the controlled grace of a being absolutely confident in its place in the universe. Beside Alpha walked Phantom, a sleek female whose dark hide seemed to absorb light itself, her burning eyes scanning the assembled delegates with an intelligence that made several of them unconsciously step backward. Remove those creatures from this sacred chamber immediately. High Counselor Vexnari's voice cracked with barely controlled panic, her mandibles clicking in the rapid pattern that indicated extreme stress. This is a violation of every protocol, every safety measure we've established. Alpha turned his massive head toward the High Counselor, and for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, predator and politician stared at each other across millions of years of evolutionary separation. The shadow moth's lips pulled back slightly, revealing teeth that could shear through quantum steel plating. But instead of the snarl of aggression that every delegate expected, the creature simply sat. The movement was fluid, controlled, and unmistakably deliberate, the posture of a well-trained companion awaiting instructions. Morrison placed a calming hand on Alpha's flank, the casual intimacy of the gesture sending ripples of shock through the assembled representatives. "They're not here to hurt anyone," he said with the calm confidence of someone who had learned to think like a pack member. "They're here because they want to help." Help! Ambassador Kethlar's translator unit struggled with the concept, creating feedback loops of confusion. Those things want to help? They've destroyed entire fleets, wiped out colonies, turned star systems into graveyards. "Yes," Morrison replied simply. "And now they're the most effective peacekeeping force the galaxy has ever seen." Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward from the human delegation, her field uniform bearing the scars of 3 months working alongside apex predators. Her tablet displayed mission reports that read like science fiction made manifest. The Kepler 442b pack has eliminated 17 separate threats to galactic shipping lanes in the past month alone. Pirate fleets, raider squadrons, escaped bioweapons from military research programs, even rogue AI drone swarms that were beyond our containment capabilities. She activated the holographic display, showing tactical recordings that defied conventional military doctrine. Shadowmaws moving through space in coordination with human vessels, their ability to phase through energy barriers making them perfect for boarding actions against hostile ships. Pirates surrendering the moment they detected Shadowmaw biosignatures in their vicinity. Raiders fleeing entire star systems rather than face creatures that had become legend among the criminal underworld. "They don't hunt randomly," Vasquez continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived among predators and learned their ways. "They're incredibly intelligent pack hunters with a sophisticated understanding of territory, threat assessment, and protection dynamics. It's like they instinctively understand the concept of defending their pack's territory from genuine dangers." Morrison gestured to encompass the chamber and, by extension, the galaxy beyond. "And their pack's territory now includes every world under human protection. Every colony we've established diplomatic relations with. Every species that's accepted us as allies." Phantom rose from her position beside Alpha and moved with liquid grace toward the Corathian delegation. Several members recoiled in instinctive terror, their bioarmor shifting to defensive configurations, but the female Shadowmaw made no aggressive moves. Instead, she gently placed a small data crystal at the feet of Professor Zarakadich, a message cylinder that bore the distinctive markings of the Red Comet Pirate Syndicate. Ambassador Tylak quickly interfaced with the crystal, his translation matrix working to decode the Corathian text. "It's a ransom demand," he announced, his voice tight with surprise. "For civilians on the mining colonies of Corathia Prime." According to the timestamp, this message was sent 4 days ago, but the pirates were planning to attack today. Morrison emphasized, the past tense carrying ominous implications. The pack intercepted them 2 days ago in the Tau Ceti asteroid belt. The pirates had hostages 37 civilian miners and their families. Standard protocol would have been a lengthy negotiation followed by a rescue operation with significant casualties. The holographic display shifted to show the aftermath of the encounter. Damaged pirate vessels drifting in space, their crews alive but thoroughly terrorized. Rescued hostages being transferred to Council medical ships, unharmed and praising their mysterious saviors. "The Shadowmaws didn't kill anyone," Vasquez added. "They disabled the ships, terrified the pirates into surrender, and ensured the hostages were safe before human rescue teams arrived. Perfect coordination, minimal violence, maximum effectiveness." High Counselor Vexnari was silent for a long moment, her compound eyes studying the impossible sight before her. Apex predators serving as guardians, humans and monsters working together to protect the innocent. The old certainties of galactic civilization were crumbling before her eyes, replaced by possibilities she had never imagined. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked finally, her voice carrying the weight of someone who realized that the universe had fundamentally changed. Morrison smiled, the expression somehow shared by his monstrous companions. "A new paradigm for galactic civilization. 6 months after the first tentative contact on Kepler for 42b. The galaxy had undergone a transformation so profound that historians would later mark it as the beginning of a new era in interstellar civilization. The sight of human Shadowmaw teams patrolling trade routes had evolved from impossible fantasy to routine reality, fundamentally altering the balance of power across known space. Pirates had become an endangered species in several sectors, their traditional hunting grounds now protected by predators that made their weapons seem like toys. Even the most aggressive raider clans thought twice before venturing into systems where the distinctive energy signatures of bonded packs could be detected. The mere rumor of Shadowmaw presence was enough to send criminal organizations fleeing to the galaxy's furthest reaches. But the transformation extended far beyond simple security operations, reaching into the very fabric of how different species interacted with their environments and each other. On the agricultural world of New Haven, farmer Beth Rodriguez worked her vast grain fields under twin suns, accompanied by 3 Shadowmaws who had developed an unexpected expertise in agricultural science. Whisper, Shadow, and Hunter, names that reflected both their predatory nature and their gentle integration into farm life, moved through the crops with the careful precision of creatures who had learned to channel their hunting instincts into protection rather than destruction. Blight in Sector 7, Rodriguez announced into her comm unit, watching as Whisper's massive head lifted from a patch of grain stalks, nostrils flaring as she detected the distinctive chemical signatures of fungal infection. The Shadowmaw's enhanced senses could identify bacterial diseases, pest infestations, and nutritional deficiencies weeks before the most advanced agricultural scanners. Confirmed, came the reply from the orbital monitoring station. Deploying treatment drones to the coordinates. Whisper is marking. The sight of a creature that had once terrorized star systems now serving as a guardian of food production would have been unthinkable a year ago. Yet here was Whisper, gently nudging infected plants with her nose to mark them for treatment. Her burning eyes focused not on prey, but on protecting the crops that fed millions. Halfway across the galaxy, in the pristine research laboratories of the Ethereal Consortium, Dr. James Kim found himself facing a quantum mechanics problem that had stumped the galaxy's greatest theoretical physicists for decades. Beside him, curled in a position that somehow managed to be both relaxed and alert, lay Sage, a Shadowmaw whose cognitive abilities had proven to extend far beyond predatory intelligence. The probability matrices for 11-dimensional string interactions just don't balance, Kim muttered, staring at holographic equations that floated in the air like crystallized impossibility. Every calculation leads to paradoxes that violate the fundamental laws of quantum mechanics. Sage opened one burning eye and studied the equations with an intelligence that transcended species barriers. Then, with movements that seemed almost casual, the massive predator approached the holographic display and began manipulating the mathematical constructs with her nose and claws, rearranging variables and patterns that Kim had never considered. "Wait," Kim breathed, watching as the equations suddenly began to align in ways that made perfect sense. "You're treating the dimensional interactions as pack dynamics rather than individual particles. The mathematics work if you consider quantum entanglement as a form of pack bonding across spacetime." It was a breakthrough that would revolutionize physics, achieved through the unique perspective of a creature whose pack-oriented intelligence approached problems in ways that purely logical minds could never imagine. On the fortress world of Vanguard, General Patricia Hayes observed joint military exercises that redefined the concepts of tactical coordination and battlefield effectiveness. Human soldiers and Shadowmaw packs moved through complex training scenarios with a synchronization that amazed even veteran tacticians who had spent decades studying military coordination. "Alpha Team, advance on the objective," Hayes commanded through the tactical network. She watched as Sergeant Torres and her bonded partner, a scarred veteran named Storm, moved through the urban warfare simulation with perfect coordination. Neither needed to communicate verbally. Their movements flowed together like a deadly dance, each anticipating the other's actions with supernatural precision. "It's unprecedented," reported Dr. Cleth Moore to the Council's scientific directorate, his crystalline form pulsing with patterns of amazed discovery. "The neural synchronization between bonded humans and Shadowmaws is creating entirely new forms of consciousness. They're not just communicating, they're sharing cognitive processes." The holographic displays showed brain scans that defied conventional understanding of neurological function. The patterns revealed bonded pairs whose thoughts moved in harmony, creating a form of distributed intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. They're sharing emotions, intentions, even sensory data, Clethmore continued. The humans call it pack sense, an intuitive understanding that transcends language and reaches directly into the realm of shared consciousness. On the display, Captain Morrison and Alpha moved through a tactical simulation with movements so perfectly coordinated that they seemed to share a single mind. Neither needed to communicate their intentions. They simply knew, with absolute certainty, what their partner would do in any given situation. But how is this level of integration possible? Demanded Professor Zarakatich, her bio-armor rippling with fascinated confusion. The Shadowmaws have never demonstrated such adaptability with any other species in recorded history. Because, came a familiar voice as Dr. Vasquez entered the chamber with Phantom at her side. Every other species tried to change them into something they weren't. The assembled scientists turned to regard the woman who had become the galaxy's foremost expert on human Shadowmaw bonding. Phantom moved beside her with the fluid grace of a predator who had found her perfect hunting partner, their synchronization so complete that they seemed to breathe in unison. For centuries, every civilization that encountered the Shadowmaws approached them with the same fundamental assumption, that they needed to be contained, controlled, or modified to fit into galactic society, Vasquez explained. But humans have a different evolutionary history. We've spent millions of years learning to coexist with apex predators, not by making them less dangerous, but by earning their respect and partnership. She gestured to Phantom, whose massive head turned to regard the assembled scientists with eyes that burned with ancient intelligence. The bond isn't about domination or domestication. It's about mutual recognition between apex species who choose to hunt together rather than against each other. 5 years after the first impossible handshake between human and Shadowmaw on the devastated surface of Kepler 442b, the Galactic Council Chamber had been transformed into something that would have been unimaginable to previous generations. The Great Hall, once a sterile monument to sapient superiority over the natural world, now hosted the most diverse gathering in galactic history. Massive Shadowmaws lay beside their human companions like living shadows given form, their presence no longer a source of terror but of profound respect. Void stalkers from the Crimson Nebula, creatures of living darkness that fed on stellar radiation, curled around their handlers with the contentment of apex predators who had found their place in civilization. Even the legendary crystal dragons of Arcturus, beings of such raw power that they had once been worshipped as gods, had begun showing unprecedented interest in human contact. The transformation was more than symbolic. It represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy understood the relationship between intelligence and instinct, between civilization and the wild. Ambassador Amanda Torres, who had risen from staff sergeant to become the director of interspecies integration, stood before the assembled delegates with Alpha at her side. The massive Shadowmaw had grown even larger over the years, bearing the scars of countless battles fought not in conquest but in defense of the innocent. His presence commanded absolute attention from every being in the chamber, a living testament to the power of partnership over domination. The Predator integration program has exceeded every projection, surpassed every hope, and redefined every assumption about the nature of galactic civilization, Torres reported, her voice carrying across the chamber with the authority of someone who had helped reshape the universe itself. Crime rates in protected sectors have dropped by 93%. Piracy, which once plagued our trade routes like a chronic disease, has been virtually eliminated from 17 major shipping corridors. The holographic displays surrounding the chamber showed statistics that read like a peaceful revolution written in data. Theft, assault, smuggling, and terrorism had plummeted wherever human-predator partnerships operated. Even the dreaded swarm worlds, whose hive-mind queens had resisted diplomatic contact for centuries, had requested human mediators to facilitate communication with their traditional enemies. But the most significant transformation, Torres continued, her hand resting on Alpha's scarred flank with the casual intimacy of family, isn't in crime statistics or military effectiveness. It's in how we understand ourselves and our place in the cosmic order. The displays shifted to show scenes from across the galaxy that would have been considered impossible just years before. Children of a dozen different species played alongside young shadowmaws in parks and schools, their laughter echoing across worlds where fear had once reigned supreme. Elderly Corathians, their bio-armor dim with age, received gentle assistance from crystal dragons whose crystalline forms resonated with healing frequencies. Zephyrian scientists worked in perfect harmony with void stalkers to explore dark matter phenomena at the galaxy's edge, their combined perspectives revealing secrets of the universe that neither could have discovered alone. We've learned something that our ancestors forgot in their rush toward technological dominance, Torres explained, her voice soft but carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. The galaxy isn't a collection of separate species competing for limited resources. It's one massive ecosystem, one enormous pack, where every member predator and prey, ancient and young, logical and instinctual, has a vital role to play. High Counselor Vexnari, now an old friend whose own bonded companion, a fierce but affectionate shadow kitten named Nova, dozed at her feet, nodded with the wisdom of someone who had witnessed the impossible become routine. The humans have taught us something our civilizations had spent millennia trying to forget, she said, her mandibles clicking in patterns of deep satisfaction. True strength doesn't come from domination or control. It comes from family, from belonging, from the bonds we choose to forge with those different from ourselves. Dr. Elena Vasquez, her hair now silver with years of fieldwork across hostile worlds, stood with Phantom beside her. The great predator had become a legend throughout known space. The Shadowmaw who had helped save entire star systems from annihilation, who had faced down pirate fleets and criminal cartels with the quiet confidence of a protector defending her pack. There's something else, Vasquez announced, her voice carrying the excitement of discovery that had driven her from her first days on Kepler 442b. For months now, the Shadowmaws have been trying to communicate something profound. Phantom and Alpha have been creating star maps, showing us regions of space that exist beyond our current exploration boundaries. The chamber's main display activated, revealing crude but unmistakably accurate stellar cartography, constellations and nebulae depicted in scratches carved into metal plates and cave walls by claws that could tear through starship armor. The maps showed areas of space that lay beyond the galactic rim, in regions where no Council expedition had ever traveled. They're not just apex predators, Vasquez revealed, her discovery carrying implications that sent thrills of excitement and apprehension through the assembled delegates. They're explorers, perhaps the galaxy's oldest spacefaring species. Their kind has been traveling between star systems for millennia, long before any of our civilizations achieved faster-than-light travel. They've seen worlds, phenomena, and forms of life that we can barely imagine. The implications sent ripples of wonder through the chamber. The Shadowmaws weren't just weapons of war or guardians of peace. They were guides to mysteries that lay beyond the edge of known space, keys to unlocking secrets that could revolutionize understanding of the universe itself. Alpha approached the central podium with movements that spoke of ancient wisdom and cosmic patience. From somewhere within his shadowy form, he produced a crystalline object that pulsed with inner light, displaying a three-dimensional map of stellar regions that lay beyond the galactic rim. The crystal hummed with frequencies that seemed to resonate directly with the consciousness of every being present. "They want to show us," Torres translated, her pack sense allowing her to understand Alpha's intentions with perfect clarity. "There are others out there, species and wonders that dwarf anything we've encountered in our small corner of the galaxy. Civilizations that predate our oldest records, phenomena that challenge our understanding of physics and consciousness itself." The crystal's display expanded, showing vast structures that might have been megastructures built around entire star systems, energy patterns that suggested forms of life based on principles completely alien to carbon-based biology, and stellar formations that appeared to have been deliberately arranged across impossible distances. And some of them, Torres added, her voice carrying a note of caution that reminded everyone that the universe held dangers as well as wonders, might not share our newfound appreciation for cooperation and mutual respect. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over them like a cosmic revelation. The galaxy they knew, with all its conflicts and alliances, its wars and peace treaties, was just the beginning. Beyond the rim lay infinite possibilities and infinite challenges. But that's an adventure for tomorrow, Torres concluded, her smile reflecting the confidence of someone who had learned that no challenge was insurmountable when faced by a united pack. Today, we celebrate what we've accomplished together. We've proven that no creature is beyond redemption. No species too dangerous to befriend. No predator too wild to love. She looked around the chamber at the impossible sight that had become beautifully routine, dozens of species, predator and prey, ancient enemies and new allies, all coexisting in harmony that their ancestors would have considered miraculous. The galaxy's most dangerous predators, she said with a smile that was somehow shared by every human and Shadowmaw present, have become its most loving family. Outside the great windows of the council chamber, the stars beckoned with promises of wonders yet to be discovered, adventures yet to be shared, and bonds yet to be forged. And at the center of it all were the humans, the small, soft, apparently defenseless species that had done what no one else could imagine. They had looked at the universe's monsters and seen potential friends, family, and partners in the greatest adventure of all, the exploration of infinite possibility guided by infinite love. Author's note: this story explores the classic HFY theme that humans possess unique traits. In this case, our evolutionary history of pack bonding and coexistence with predators that allow us to succeed where other species fail. The premise celebrates humanity's capacity for empathy, partnership, and our ability to see potential friends where others see only threats.